Welcome to Season 2 of How to Not Kill Your Community, a podcast of the Delaware Community Foundation. Join us in exploring how the choices we make impact the well-being of our families and neighbors. This season, we'll bring together experts in volunteering, entrepreneurship, public transportation, and even joy to tackle one essential question: how do we not kill our community? All right, we're back with Season 2 of How to Not Kill Your Community. And today my guests are my good friends, Lisa Goodman and Drew Fennell. Thanks for both of you for being here.
Happy to be here.
So I'm going to introduce you two, and then we're going to get right to it. Lisa Goodman is a lawyer and founder of a Delaware lobbying firm, 302 Strategies, where she represented scores of clients in Dover for many years, holds a JD from Widener, and has degrees from University of Delaware and Westchester. Active in the legal advocacy community, serving as president of Equality Delaware, an organization that championed Delaware's civil union and anti-discrimination laws. Drew Fennell, besides being the former chair of the Delaware Community Foundation, is an attorney, strategic advisor, and longtime civil rights and public service leader in the state, has a BA from University of Delaware and a JD from Rutgers. Many positions include Executive Director of the ACLU of Delaware, Executive Director of the Delaware Criminal Justice Council, Chief of Staff to Governor Markell, Senior VP at Christiana Care, and most recently, Executive Vice President at Social Contract. Yeah. Again, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So, Lisa and Drew, some people feel that LGBTQ lifestyles go against my values, and you should just be quiet about it. What do you say about that?
Are we back to that again?
Right?
I think that, we talked about this earlier today, Lisa and I, as we were preparing for this, sort of what's changed recently, right? And some of it is that this is a question people feel comfortable asking again. It's like, why do you need to be out? Yeah. Right? And I think that's likely to be a topic we're going to return to today, because I think being out's really critical to who we are and how we are in the world. We're here, we're present, and I think it's important that we stay that way.
Yeah, Drew's hit the nail on the head. I mean, the fact that people feel comfortable using the term lifestyle again, right? Right. As opposed to orientation or, any other term that more accurately expresses that this is the way you're born, is going backwards. But, that's been sort of the theme of the last few years.
Yeah. And we intentionally picked that word just to bring that issue back to the table, because that is, right, a little nuts.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm having those conversations again that we used to have, where people would say, it's fine, but you don't have to put it in my face.
Exactly.
And I'm like, you have a picture of your wife on your desk. Yeah. It's like, I don't think that's throwing it in my face.
And what's a little crazy is, in so many ways, that is the old, that's
very
done.
Old paradigm.
But it's creeping back.
It is creeping back.
Yeah.
Oh, it's more than creeping. I mean, it's roaring back. Yeah. Right. I mean,
that's right.
Literally, removing books from the library that have any kind of LGBTQ theme. I mean, that is roaring back. I mean, setting aside the fact that in America we're banning books, particularly books are being targeted about LGBTQ people.
Yeah. Yeah. So the two of you had the first civil union in the state of Delaware in 2012. Wow. 14 years ago. Wow. After advocating for the civil union law, Lisa as president of Equality Delaware at the time, and Drew with the ACLU at the time. Tell us about that moment, that achievement, and how did that feel, and what do you think about it in retrospect?
Well, those were heady days, right? I mean, we to have the honor of really feeling like you're in the white hot center of making change, a really important change, I think for both of us was, the honor of a lifetime. I mean, we went on and did marriage, and we went on and did trans non-discrimination and an anti-hate crimes bill for trans Delawareans, which was, frankly, the next step. Yeah. But I mean, that day, I think personally for us, we didn't know it was going to happen. The Ken Bolden, who was then the clerk of the peace, didn't tell us that he had selected us to be the first couple until about 2 weeks ahead of time. So it was a scramble, but it was joyous. I mean, and Drew tells the story about how joyous it was better than I do. I remember the joy, and I also remember the planning. I mean, we had to sit down with our rector at Trinity, Patty Downing, who's an amazing person, and who really stuck her neck out to do it, and talk about what we were going to do if someone stood up and raised a protest. You know, there's a part of the Episcopal service where they say, you know, if anyone knows any reason why these two people shouldn't be joined together, speak now or forever hold your peace. Well, we had a plan for what was going to happen, because it was at the regular Sunday service. I mean, there was no list of guests. So, you know, we had to plan for that. We had to plan for, you know, violence. We had to plan for all those things. Now, Drew can talk about how it turned out.
It was kind of amazing. You know, I was really worried because we didn't know. It was I mean, I think nobody was thinking carefully about making it January 1, which was not only a holiday, but a Sunday. Right? The clerk of the peace office wasn't going to be open the first day. So Ken Bolden, God bless him, opened it up. And it was at the Sunday service. The only way we could tell people what was happening was just like to email people and put it on Facebook and just like call our friends from home and make sure that they knew they could come.
Back when Facebook was safe.
Right?
Sort of.
And, you know, so we had no idea whether there'd be 25 people there or hundreds of people. And it turned out there were hundreds of people. And we opened the doors. And really, it was like getting a wave of love and joy coming through the doors. We were there with our children and our families, and sort of walking in and walking down the aisle with Patty and our friends there, and looking out. And again, we didn't know who was going to come. So there was my best friend from law school and my friends I'd grown up with, and our children, parents of our children's friends. And it was an amazing moment. Of real unity and joy. And you don't get many of those in the world of activism, right? There are very few sort of points of celebration that are kind of that
purely
elevated.
Joyful.
You know, and we had another event kind of like that when we signed the employment non-discrimination bill, the first one. And it was right over here across the street from where we're sitting now at the Queen. And Jack Markell was there, and he said it was the best party he'd ever been to.
That was the civil union bill.
Was that?
Yeah.
No, that was the
the
that was the civil.
non-discrimination bill
That's
was
true.
a camp.
That was the
There's
civil,
a lot of bills.
That's the
A
civil,
lot of bills.
But that civil union bill was signed at the Queen, and like hundreds of people from the community came. You know, there was singing and laughing and dancing and music, and it was a joyful time. It was a really joyful time.
And, you know, I think particularly to Drew's point about you don't get many of those. And to show you how times had changed, in 2000, we had a commitment ceremony. Now, we'd been together for a while then, but we had a commitment ceremony in 2000. And to show you how times have changed, we, an Episcopal priest who is a dear friend of ours, got the keys to a Presbyterian church and took us in through the back when the church was dark. Wow. And basically, we snuck into the church with just our family and had a commitment ceremony. I mean, we snuck in,
with their blessing.
The rector of the church knew it was happening,
Sure.
right? I mean, that's the wrong term for a Presbyterian church, but you know what I mean. But it was literally just us and our family, and it was a little bit quiet. And then we had a party, and, you know, the managing partner of my law firm came, and it was great. I mean, we've always been blessed to have supportive, you know, friends and coworkers, but times do change.
It's really interesting, this point about moments of joy in long struggles.
Yeah.
Right. And important to pause on those and say, you know, there's something really happened here. It's not everything, but something really happened, and let's be happy and joyful.
Yeah, because you get a lot of the other moments. You know, you get a lot of the Westboro Baptist is coming again, and we have to deal with them.
I forgot.
And and those moments happen in the middle of the joy too. And you can't let them steal the joy.
That's such a great point.
Right. So, you know, the morning that we did the marriage. The marriage ceremony, the first marriage licenses. Westboro Baptist Church was right out in front of the courthouse, and in front of City Hall, and they were the city county building, and they were holding their signs and screaming and yelling and being amplified
craziness.
You know, and Lisa and I went in to help the two women who were getting married that day get themselves situated, and I look out, and there are my children standing opposite Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah.
It didn't feel very good, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, being able to see Karen Peterson and her longtime partner, Vicky Bandy, get married that day was a high. So you can't let anybody steal your joy.
There's a theme in a lot of these interviews in the podcast this year. It's joy and love.
Yeah.
And so many of the discussions we're having include those two ideas as part of how do you build community and build a specific community.
Well, and I think too, as returning to that question of, do you hide, right? Is that, if you're not going to be honest about who you are and who you care about and who your family is, neither you nor the people that you know get the opportunity to really be in community with you.
That's lovely.
You foreclose a lot of intimacy and friendship and love and support if you can't talk about who you are.
Yeah.
And it's a loss for everybody.
And I think our community has always been particularly good out of necessity at turning bad things into positive things. I mean, famously in Delaware, right, there was an attack down in Rehoboth,
Talk
right?
about that,
in the early 90s. And where a gay man was viciously attacked with a baseball bat on the boardwalk. And, out of that came, relatively speaking, very quick passage, an early passage of our LGBTQ non-discrimination bill. Out of that...
Hate crimes.
I'm sorry, non-discrimination, hate crimes. Out of that came Camp Rehoboth, right? I mean... and Steve Elkins and Murray were, I think already in Rehoboth doing some of that work, but it became so evident that it was so necessary, right? And they, they get a lot of credit, but they still probably don't get enough credit, right? For the incredible work they did to build community down there, and to work with the police so that when bad things happen, which they do, right? The police are your friend and not an organization that you fear to call, right? When you call them, you can expect fair treatment. And that was huge. And they created an unbelievable community center and community. It started out, right? Started out that the center of the LGBTQ community in Rehoboth was a little tiny gay bookstore. Tiny, right? In the courtyard where camp is now. And from that, they grew this unbelievable organization that just has done incredible work.
Well, it's interesting. Rehoboth has been had a large LGBTQ population for a long time, even before they started Camp Rehoboth.
Absolutely.
And that it's interesting the importance of having a formal recognition, and we are part of the community in a formal public way.
And and at that time, one of the things that some anti-gay folks in that community tried to do was deploy the word family against the gay community.
Keep Rehoboth a family town. Those were the bumper stickers.
Right.
And it's really interesting to me as we think about how different movements use language. Mm-hmm. I think the gay rights movement did as good a job as any movement has done of basically taking those words back.
Yeah.
Right. And as we start to look at more recent fights around trans marriage and some other things, this idea of, family, humanity, relationships, these are words that we have sort of claimed as our own and really made people think differently about. I think it's really important.
Yeah. Talk about how the next generation of LGBTQ activists are taking the movement in new places.
I watch what's happening with our transgender allies, friends, loved ones, and it feels awful.
Yeah.
And I think it's mobilizing a whole new generation of activists and allies to protect them, and I think that's a terrible reason to have it, and it's a beautiful thing to see. at the same time. So I think as I look at that movement and the many people that are coming out to support transgendered people, that feels important and good and solid. And I hope that those of us who've been around longer, can offer those young people whatever support we can.
It falls on, I guess, us now as older members of the community to say, like, we can get through this. We've done it before. We can get through this and we can come out the other side. I hate that we're having to say that, but we are. And the other thing about young people coming up, I'll say, is we'd be remiss if we didn't say, Sarah McBride is a huge bright light, I think. Sarah was a board member of Equality Delaware. She was right there with us in civil unions and in marriage and obviously in the trans non-discrimination and hate crimes bill that we did the same year that we did marriage. Her running for state senate here, talk about something that built community, right? Everyone came out to knock doors and to raise money and to work, to get her elected. And then when she ran for Congress and got elected to Congress, it happened again. Yeah. And so, lifting up those young people and young leaders, we're super fortunate in Delaware. That goes without saying. We have great elected officials who really, protect our rights and are really committed to it. But I feel good about the generation coming up.
And I look around at some of the young gay leaders in our community, and they're just everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And just so fully present in every.
And it's kind of not a thing
in every place. And
right? They're just part of it.
Right. And I think that's really exciting. But I also see a consciousness among them that I find really heartening. There's a young woman, Carol Ann Deal, who's doing basically a queer history project, and going back and trying to document a lot of things that were not always well documented. And she's just an amazing young historian who's doing just remarkable work. Something so different from what someone like Sarah is doing, right? Mm-hmm. But still very conscious of who she's representing and the stories that she wants to tell. There's some remarkable things happening in our community.
They are, and of course Sarah is absolutely stunning. And I'm sure you have the experience too when people find out Sarah McBride. Well, around the country, they say she's amazing and joyful.
Well, and it's really funny because, Sarah's dad was one of my law partners, right? And he's, 10 or 15 years older than me. So I've literally known Sarah since she was knee-high to a grasshopper, and Drew's known her since she was half knee-high to a grasshopper. And, I knew her when her dad would come in and say, well, it was Sarah's, I don't know which, 8th birthday, 9th birthday. And what she wanted for her birthday was a podium so she could practice making, political speeches.
And she got really good at it.
Oh, my goodness. It was blindingly clear to anybody who knew Sarah that, she was going to be president someday. Yeah. And I still believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And she was on this podcast last year, and of course, it's always a joy to talk with her about her work and her view of the world. So in this state, so we kind of painted a picture like, there are people who think it's bad. And in this state, I think the laws are on the side of full inclusion of the LGBTQ community, of all kinds of communities. We try to be a welcoming place. What are you finding as the most effective strategic approaches to dealing with these things?
Want me to go first?
Oh, yes.
So, Drew and I have something we have said forever, which is the most effective thing you can do is come out. And, Drew and I have taken, we've each had a period in our lives where we were probably the most out person in Delaware, right? Drew when she was doing the ACLU work, and me when I was, the mouthpiece of Equality Delaware, doing civil unions and marriage in particular, and some other bills. And, you have to come out. And despite how, out we are and were and public we were about it, we still both have to come out every day, right? You get on a call to a doctor's office and they'll say, what's your husband's name? And, you have to say, well, my wife's name. That's coming out, right? Because, and if those touch points, right? That person might think twice before they make that assumption again. That person can't say, well, I've never met a gay person ever again. They can't say it. And it's it's just those, I mean, there's lots of other big things you can do, but honestly, coming out as a gay person or as an ally, you know, stopping someone who's spouting off ugly things as an ally, it's huge. I don't think there's anything bigger.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And, you know, it's coming out, being present, being your whole self in community, I think is the best way to create allies, right? And it's the best way to, for me, it has always been a way of finding strength in those relationships, because when I come out, sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes unpleasant and occasionally really unpleasant. But most of the time, I get someone who's on my team now, right? So I find someone who is now willing to kind of stick up for me, because there are still, even now, time, you know, and frankly, more frequently lately, where I don't feel completely at ease. And so it's really important to me that I know you and I can look across the room and I know that if something unpleasant happens, you've got my back, right? And so
Guaranteed.
this is really important. And if you're not out, you can't create that. And you can't create it for yourself. And I hope that, you know, you also get something out of that, right? Because we have each other's back, right? And so that's, I think, when we talk about strong ties and medium ties and weak ties in communities, being known and knowing people is, in the end, kind of all there is.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we build the blocks in order to get the kind of community that we all want to live in.
In our discussion about religion and the importance of religion in communities, in another one of these interviews, we talk a lot about, you know, to really fulfill the religious promise, we're all a single community and we need to all be there for each other. And I think that speaks a lot to what you're talking about here, the joy and love across.
And you can't be present in that way if you're forced to lie.
Yeah, spot on.
So,
You know, I one of the cool things about doing this, partly because we're friends, it's fun to talk, but also to just have you say, you know, a short version of some of the history, some of the recent history of the LGBTQ movement in this state, and what you saw and what you were part of. And I think we all appreciate what you've done, and we're all standing on your shoulders in this work, those of us who care about these things. Any last words you'd like to share? Because I know we're at time.
I think the only thing when you say that, right, what I see in my mind's eye are the huge numbers of people that joined together to make that happen.
Yeah.
It was really it was astonishing, the number of people who came forward, both people in the LGBTQ community and our allies, to really insist on equality and recognition for our relationships, for each other, for safety. And that was huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what I'll say is, you know, the times right now are scary. And, you know, we see people going up to the Supreme Court and trying to overturn marriage, and, you know, Kansas telling, you know, its trans citizens that they have to turn in their driver's license today, not tomorrow, today. Just you know, a parade of really ugly either attempts or successes on their part. And, you know, I would just say, like, it's a continuum, right? Going back to what I said about us getting the young people together and saying, hey, you know, we can get through this. We've trust us. You know, we've been through it. You'll get through it too. You know, progress is a continuum, right? I mean, it's never done, and it's never secure. But it's a continuum, and you might be in a bad place now, but you just have to keep going because you'll get to a better place. You know, I think we have to remind ourselves about that. And I think it's important for other people, particularly younger people, to hear that too.
I think of the Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice, but it only does that if you work at it.
Right. You got to grab it and bend that bar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. What is it? Eternal vigilance is the price
of liberty.
Yep, right.
Yeah, indeed.
A republic if you can keep it. Right?
Then we got them all.
Yeah, we got them all.
Thank you both. Yeah. This is great.
Thanks.
How to Not Kill Your Community is produced by 1440 Film Company and the Delaware Community Foundation, celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Since our founding in 1986, the DCF has granted more than $530 million to 4,000 organizations by maximizing the giving of thousands of Delawareans. Learn how you can make more possible at www.delcf.org.